okay, what's your primary demographic? Well, we're going to hit on adults, kids, mixed age family groups, business stuff. It's like, okay, maybe. Hi, I'm Russ.
And I'm Danny.
And this is the Memory Makers Podcast,
the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memories.
Nothing fancy, but let's get into it, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready to get into it. I like that little ditty. You didn't even include the word memory makers in it.
Nope. It's early as we're recording this, so we are, just making sure we're picking our spots.
Picking our spots. I like it. Know where to focus the energy. Today, we're going to focus the energy on the topic.
That's right. As we were chatting before this episode gets recorded, one of the things that Danny and I have really had kind of a fascination with, or an inclination towards, insert whatever Asian word you want to, where we feel like, hey, you've got this boom of activity that's happening. People are trying to open up new locations, mini golf's exploding. People are trying to do all of this stuff. But in people's haste to either improve their existing locations or get doors open, one of the big things that I think can get lost in the shuffle or taken for granted is, who is our ideal customer and how do we target that audience at every turn? And we've hit on these things tangentially in different episodes, but we've not really done more of a holistic drill down across, is an attraction right? And if so, within that attraction, how do we start to do, specific choices and intentionalities that speak to the target audience? And so as we look at this, a lot of FEC attractions are super inclusive, right? That's why they've been around as long as they have. Bowling would not be around unless it was very inclusive across ages 5 to 95 years old, being able to play it. But we think it's easy to make the mistake of too many people thinking that they want to target everyone, right? When we talk with people looking to open up their venue and say, okay, what's your primary demographic? Well, we're going to hit on adults, kids, mixed age family groups, business stuff. It's like, okay, maybe, but in what order and who is at the top of that list? Who's going to be able to sustain you, from either the number of people like that you have in your market, how much disposable income they have, all of this stuff. And so it's really important to remember, and that cliche is out there for a reason, you can't be all things to all people or you'll be special to no one, right? And so the idea of today's episode is going to be diving into that at multiple levels within attractions.
So I want to share a little background story of a conversation that I had with Don McBrain, who unfortunately passed away last year. But before he did, I had a chance to get breakfast with him one morning. We sat for like 2 hours and just nerded out about marketing stuff when it comes to his business. And so he had a brand called The Summit here in Colorado, and they had, I think, 3, maybe 4 locations. And he talked about how for his business, he had a very specific, well-defined target demographic, which was active adults age 21 to 44. Specifically, that was his target audience. And so everything that he did within his business was all about getting the attention of that target audience, bringing that target audience, and having food and beverage attractions and packages that make sense for that target audience. It was all about adults, to the point where, his location is a very kind of modern, upscale, very nice inside. It's not it's a very kind of modern style of family entertainment center. Fantastic facility. It's gorgeous inside. And one day he came in and he had seen that one of his managers had put a table right inside the front door that said, "Book your birthday party here." And it had all the, the accoutrements, so to speak, the little accessories of birthday party, the plates and the napkins and the cups and the hats and all that different stuff. And he walked up to his management team and said, "Take this out now. Get rid of it. I don't want it here." And they're like, "Well, why?" And he goes, "Because our target audience is adults 21 to 44. If we have someone who's in that age group. Let's say we have a 30-year-old person that's walking in and they're considering, oh, maybe this place could be good for us to do our corporate event. And the first thing they see when they walk in the door is a table for booking your birthday party here. They're going to go, this is not the right place for us immediately, because their association of birthday parties is going to be for little kids, but they have a corporate group that they want to bring in. Now, here is what tends to happen when I give this example to a lot of different people. They go, yeah, but I want birthday parties. So did Don. And you know what? His facility booked tons of birthday parties, because what's important to remember is just because you have a target audience and a target demographic, it doesn't mean that you ignore everyone else. It doesn't mean that you set them to the side and they never come in your center because they don't feel like they don't belong. What he found is when he targeted the adults, it was easy for families and kids to come in and book their parties. But if he targeted for kids and families, it was a lot harder to get adults in the door. And that's where a lot of his money came from. And so even when you go to the before Main Event had purchased the location, you went to the Summit website. Every single picture on the website was an adult between 21 and 44 years old, because they wanted to be able to show this is a place for adults. And even though they did that, they still had tons of birthday parties. They had tons of kids. They had tons of families. But he understood the power of a target demographic.
Mm-hmm.
And what can happen sometimes is the next question is someone says, okay, well, let's say I've got my target demographic. Maybe it's mixed age family groups with kids because they want to go for birthday parties. Or maybe it's adults or something else, right? They'll say, is this attraction, they'll fill in the blank, is blank attraction right for my audience? Is this good for my audience? Which makes sense as a question to ask, because if you have your target demographic, you want to make sure that you're providing an attraction mix that works for that demographic. And while there are going to be certain attractions that are very much specific to an age group, there are certain attractions that are definitely, this is a kid's attraction and that's what it is. For a lot of the other ones, the answer to that question of, is this right for my audience? The answer is, it depends. And that answer can frustrate people, but I want to give an example, because a lot of attractions can be created, packaged, and positioned in a way that is good for many different audiences, depending on how you want to package and brand it. And I want to use a consumer product, a very common consumer product, as an example to showcase what I mean by this. Sparkling water. Perrier Liquid Death. In case of you have never heard of Liquid Death, if you look up a picture of the can of what that looks like, very different. It's essentially the exact same product. This is sparkling water.
Yeah.
However, the audience for Perrier and the audience for Liquid Death are entirely different. The branding is entirely different. The purpose is entirely different. So it's a good example to be able to show you can take one product and package it in a certain way that's really going to resonate with an audience. And that's what we want to get into now. And I know, Russ, you want to hit on a few examples within attractions of how this can be done.
Absolutely. And for the people watching the podcast, not just listening to it, whenever Danny gives this example, I always look at Perrier is pinky up and Liquid Death is rock and roll. So you gotta, really, really look at that and see. And it starts then, hey, if let's now take something like laser tag in replace of sparkling water, right? How do we hone this attraction towards the primary audience that we want to serve, right? Are we going to be pinky up or are we going to be rock and roll? It's still sparkling water, it's still laser tag, but what are the decisions and things that we need to be cognizant of in order to start doing that? And we'll look at a handful of different attraction styles in order to do this, but you look at the easiest kind of first thing that comes to mind in a lot of people's piece is like, what's the theme, right? Like we can pick something that's going to be, jungly if we want it to be for kids, or we're going to pick something that's sci-fi and a little bit more gritty if it's going towards adults. Good starting point. Yes, it's a natural progression that you want to start with that and also make sure that you've got something unique in your market that isn't the same as two other laser tags in your area or what have you. But this is only the first of several decisions that we need to be taking a look at. And so we also need to look at how sophisticated is the gameplay going to be, and what does the staff engagement look like before, during, and after the experience. These are often underthought in what we need to look at, right? So if you're looking at adults 21 to 44, you know that you want to have laser tag in that as part of that experience, like Don McBrain did at their location, like Andretti's do, what have you. They want that premium experience, right? Like if they're going to be out there, they're willing to pay, but in return, they want a high level of sophistication throughout all stages of the game. And so then you need to look at, okay, well, what are we doing in the briefing investing room to elevate and highlight that beyond just, kind of cranking people through the line and getting them in there? So do you look at, hey, we want media walls and extra launch pieces. We want more sophisticated targets that reveal themselves as you unlock them, right? Like it's a more difficult level of gameplay that those experienced players and older folks will appreciate more because they're the ones actually footing the bill for that. At the other flip side of that would be, hey, if we know that we're going for younger audience, maybe a little bit of mixed age family group and it's got to be mom approved, but really we're going after birthday parties and kids really resonating with that. Well, if I've got all of these extra bells and whistles, as far as very complicated game formats or what have you, that's going to get them tuned out really quick because it's going to be too hard for them to grasp the core concepts and really feel like then they can leverage or that they're doing a good job, right? Like they need a little bit more encouragement. Now, I say this also recognizing the fact that I get my butt handed to me when I play online video games, probably by, kids much younger than myself. So not to undersell how well kids can play, but we need to think of like what is the level of accessibility for that style of gameplay. If it's super over the top all the time, and they can't just focus on kind of what's in front of them, that can create that friction and that disconnect. And so even with something like a laser tag, again, theme, yes, but also what type of interactions are we creating? How sophisticated are they throughout the entire process? And what accessibility are we putting in there for the experience? Because otherwise, and then the final thing is the staff engagement, right? Like if I'm given a laser tag brief and it's for adults, and this can even flex as you have different groups in there throughout the day, but how I'm briefing to a bachelor party or a corporate group and the jokes or the type of ways that I'm relating to them is different. And so if we know, hey, our primary demographic and age range is going to be young kids, and we know that we do birthday parties, we're going to have really specific training on how to get down on one knee, how to make eye contact, how to highlight that birthday kid, as opposed to something like, with an adult-oriented group, it's like, well, that's removing friction and creating more of that VIP type of experience. So, Danny, I'll flip it to you as well, where we can break this down similarly with something like mini golf.
Mini golf is something that's been around for over 100 years. Everyone knows how to play mini golf. It's another example, kind of like bowling, that's super inclusive. Anyone can play. And we can divide this out into two different kinds of experiences that can attract very different audiences. So maybe you want to go for adults, right? Or you want a very high level, maybe premium experience for adults to socially compete and enjoy food and beverage. We have a product called Lucky Putt that does that, right? It takes the idea of mini golf, where normally you have a little piece of paper and a tiny pencil and you're tracking your strokes on every single hole and you add them up yourself. It gets rid of all that and just says, hey, you have a putter that is attached to you and you scan in on every hole and it tracks your score all the way through. And instead of saying, oh, you get 2 or 3 strokes, you get 4,000 points, right? And there's automated scoring, there's leaderboards built in, all these different things. The fit and finish of the holes and the challenges in that course are very kind of modern and upscale, would work really well for corporate and adult groups and things like that. Every single one of the tables where people scan in to start their hole also acts as a cocktail table. So if they're going to walk around with drinks, they have somewhere to set that really easily. It's got a lot of integrated lights, and it's just a really good experience for adults. And one of the other features is, let's say, oh, you've got a group of 50 different people that are coming in from a corporate group or something like that. You can just have them check in, get their putter scanned, and they can start on any hole. They don't have to go 1, then 2, then 3. They can start at 7, then do 2, and then do 3, because the system tracks all of it for them, right? That is something that is an example of mini golf as the base idea that is packaged for an adult audience. And again, just like we talked about before, kids still play Lucky Putt. and they still have a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, let's say you want a themed indoor blacklight mini golf, right? Cosmic golf, as some people would call that. And let's say you want something that's a bit more whimsical. You want to do like a whimsical ocean themed storyline. Well, it's going to be very driven toward kids, and you're going to have a lot of bright colors and really interesting gigantic props, and you might even do some integrated sounds and light. You might do some CGI scenes that are really cool and fun. And adults can have fun if they're going to play with their kids, but it's not necessarily targeted for adults. So we can see how we can take one base product and we can package it in very different ways for different audiences. And one other thing that we'll throw in there as far as the way that you build these attractions, something like mini golf, very often people say, okay, well, I need 9 holes or I need 18 holes, because that's the way that traditional golf is done. But you can break out of that pattern. You can do 7 holes, you can do 11, 15. It doesn't really matter the quantity of the holes, because it's all about the experience and the storytelling for that. And the great part, especially about blacklight mini golf, is that if you've got some kind of funky shaped spaces that aren't just a perfect rectangle, golf can, by the nature of the way that it flows, can fit a little bit better in spaces like that than maybe some other attractions might. So something to keep in mind there as well.
Yeah, and I even think of it too where, hey, if we know we're going after younger kiddos and things, like how many kids keep their attention span through 9 holes before, it's sometimes you get to 7 and 8. And so getting rid of some of those sacred cows, I think is definitely a good mindset to have, of just what is going to actually make the best experience for how people are trying to utilize this and how we're trying to position it. I think the other thing that we want to talk about, is, and we've hit on this with some of these examples, but hey, what about these other audience members and things, and what relevancy is there for the secondary group, right? And that may not be the primary, it may not be how we're crafting 90% of our messaging and operations towards, but is there still something relevant for that? And Valo Arena, in my mind, it really jumps out, especially looking at the success that they've had since putting it in at their Katy, Texas location, where Andretti's is a primary young adult, that 21 and up, having a good time, really focused on it. But they're having a phenomenal result with Valo Arena for a couple of reasons. One, this is something that is kid-friendly but adult-capable, and so it's still something that can be very accessible and enjoyable to adults, but they're utilizing this as, hey, we've got our karting, we've got our laser tag, we've got the majority of our arcade elements and our bowling all geared towards the older adults. This Valo Arena is now something that we can have, which is predominantly focused on our secondary demographic, which are those younger kids having to come in and have a good time. So sometimes it's making sure, hey, is every single thing under our roof focused towards this one age group? Okay, we probably need to balance the scales, have a little yin to the yang with it. And that's where Valo Arena, I feel like, is really finding its stride, because it's still can be very fun and engaging for the core audience of Andretti's as a whole with those adults, but it's really speaking to that secondary audience, and the square footage and the investment level and all of that is in proportion to where they want to find that balance. And so it's really, what's the overall portfolio look like? Are the majority of our things geared towards this primary audience? The secondary audience, do they have some abilities, whether it's through the arcade or some of the hybrid attractions and things, where we can speak to them and there's something for them to do, and we can capture that revenue and per cap spending. So it's sometimes it's choices within an attraction, as well as having a balance, of, hey, we need 70% of the mix to be geared towards this group, and we need 30% of the mix geared towards this group, but that 30% still needs to be switched on and really cool, so that way those people will play a lot of it as they do it. And so looking at what those complementary or secondary attractions are to round out the focus as we get into that.
And we talked quite a bit about the aesthetics of an attraction and how that helps you target the audience. But one of the things, Russ, that you hit on earlier that I'll highlight a little bit more right now, excuse me, is the operations side. It's not just the, hey, here's the attraction we put in the spot, this is what it looks like. There's the marketing of it and the operations of it.
Yeah.
And so the marketing piece we've kind of already hit on, of whatever age group you want to go after, make sure the pictures on your website, the pictures on your social media, the videos that you show reflect that audience, so that when your audience that you want to attract is on your website, they see themselves in the pictures in a way, and they're more engaged with that. And there's also the side of the operations, right? When you've got an indoor blacklight mini golf for mixed age family groups and kids, the way that you operate that is going to be very different from an adult driven lucky putt type of experience, right? You, on the indoor blacklight mini golf side of things, you'll have ideally, you'll have an employee who's floating around that area and keeping an eye on things, so that, you know, kids aren't taking their putter and using it as a baseball bat to hit stuff, because no matter how durable something is, that's a great way for it to get damaged. But beyond that, it's going to be a largely kind of self-run experience by the players as they go from one hole to the next. And that makes sense by the way that the nature of mini golf is. But when you look at the side for the kind of adult experience for Lucky Putt, well, maybe you have a server who's coming around from the bar and taking orders from the players so that they can deliver drinks while they're playing on the course. And think of it almost like the Top Golf is to a driving range what Lucky Putt can be to mini golf. And thinking about it from the aspect of, okay, well, how do we create this kind of VIP experience? How do we create a very socially engaged experience where we offer the services to make it feel a bit more white glove, and to be able to make more money on the sales, where they don't have to leave the course in order to get the drink? You've got a server who's going to come to them. Mm-hmm. So with all that being said, we've talked about the primary demographic and why that's important, the inclusivity and why we can try to be all things to all people. We talked about a couple different attractions and how you can position them, and we talked about the operation side of things. One more thing that I'll mention here as we close up this episode is, if you like content like this, if you find this engaging and any of the other episodes that we do of the Memory Makers podcast, you should check out the upcoming Amusement 360 event that we have in a couple of months. It is the place where ambitious people keep growing. It's the place where new startups and existing operators learn how to create more profit within their business. It's educational presentations, it's panel discussions, it's operator interviews, it's tons and tons of networking. It's an event you don't want to miss. So for me, I'll just go ahead and wrap things up there. What do you say, Russ?
I think that you're spot on with it. Yeah, check it out. Amusement 360. It's entrepreneurial boot camp for people trying to, make a difference through family entertainment and location-based entertainment. I'm thrilled with what we've got coming up with that. I'm also thrilled with what we've got coming up down the pike with new episodes, and be sure to check these out as they still are releasing every week. Danny and I are enjoying it so much, and so much of the insights and requests that you guys provide helps make that happen. If you like what you've heard, also don't forget to give us a subscribe and leave us the review. We always appreciate the 5 stars.
If you got ideas for future episodes of topics or guests, follow us on social media, send us a DM.
And as always, big shout out to Mikey Mike on the 1s and 2s, working that Ultranet for us. Really appreciate everything he does behind the scenes. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one, Troublemakers. Sorry, I jumped onto yours because I couldn't tell if you froze or not.
I got thrown off because my camera got all funky. Mike, you need to talk to the system lovingly and sweetly and say little sweet nothings into its ear.
I like it. I don't know if we've ever recorded one of the episodes this early.
Yeah. A little behind the scenes for people of like, that's how time zones work. It's 7:30 in the morning for me.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Super fun. Danny, you ready?
Yes.
All right.
I am ready.
Let's go. Come on now.